When we look at the world's biggest problems, like climate change, war, massive social inequality.
Yeah, all major crises.
Right. We usually reach for external tools to fix them. We want a new policy, a new carbon capture machine, maybe, a new economic treaty.
This is a very standard human response. Fix the outside.
Exactly. But it's almost like trying to fix a deep structural software bug by just buying a shinier monitor. I mean, you might get a higher resolution picture, but the system is still going to crash.
That's a great way to put it. You get a better picture, but the crash is inevitably coming.
Right. And that brings us to the ultimate software bug, which is the human ego. Welcome to another deep dive, by the way.
I'm glad to be here for this one. It's a massive topic.
It really is. Today, we are dismantling the comprehensive framework of Acharya Prashant.
And the source material for this deep dive is just vast.
So vast. We're looking at his biographical journey, his core philosophical texts, and the transcripts of his incredibly intense dialogues.
Those unfiltered dialogues with students, scientists, interviewers, they really form the core of this.
Yeah, and the mission here is to map out the architecture of his thought, starting from the deepest, microscopic internal struggles of the mind.
And then drawing a direct, undeniable line to the most pressing external crises of our time.
Exactly. We're building this framework from the ground up so you can see exactly how the internal connects to the external.
The trajectory we are analyzing here is highly unusual. The sources highlight that Acharya Prashant is an alumnus of both the IIT and the IIM.
That's the Indian Institute of Technology and the Indian Institute of Management, right?
Yes. And for those unfamiliar, these are the absolute apex institutions in India. The acceptance rates are just fractions of a percent.
So we're talking about the absolute elite.
Exactly. The entire system there is designed to produce ultimate corporate warriors. People trained at the highest possible level to optimize capitalism.
To manage massive systems and essentially, win the material game of life.
Right. And following that, he even entered the highly coveted Indian civil services.
Which makes his pivot so completely fascinating.
It really does.
I mean, how does someone trained to be the ultimate operator of the capitalist machine become a quiet danger to pop philosophy and market spirituality?
Well, usually when someone climbs that high up the ladder of conventional success, they just spend the rest of their life defending that ladder.
Or, they use that elite training to package and sell a very sanitized, corporatized version of spirituality.
Oh, we see that all the time. But the sources reveal a complete rejection of that path by him.
He refuses to play the traditional game of spiritual compromise.
Absolutely. If we look at classical Advaita Vedanta, the ancient Indian philosophy of non-duality.
Right.
Historically, there developed a very convenient separation over the centuries. Philosophers categorized reality into two distinct realms.
Okay, break that down for us.
First, you had Paramartha, which is the realm of ultimate truth, the absolute reality where everything is one.
Got it. The high-level spiritual stuff.
Right. And second, you had Vyavahara, the transactional realm, the daily social order.
I can see how that separation gets heavily abused, honestly.
Oh, entirely.
It basically allows you to treat spirituality as like a weekend retreat.
A vacation from reality.
Yeah. You go to the mountaintop, you realize your oneness with the universe in the realm of Paramartha.
And then you come back down on Monday into the realm of Vyavahara.
And ruthlessly crush your corporate rivals. Or participate in whatever societal inequalities happen to benefit you.
It creates a massive loophole for hypocrisy. Historically, many teachers allowed inner realization to quietly coexist with outer conformity.
So you could be considered enlightened on the inside, but on the outside, you're actively participating in social evils.
Exactly. Things like the caste system, patriarchy, or in our modern context, unchecked consumption.
So the internal state didn't threaten the external status quo at all.
But Acharya Prashant's framework completely collapses that divide.
He insists that the two must become one, right?
Yes. If your understanding of the ultimate truth does not radically transform the very center of your daily living, it is simply an intellectual parlor trick.
So, according to the sources, this isn't about escaping to a Himalayan cave to meditate in isolation.
Not at all. It is about applying uncompromising non-duality to your actual physical life.
Like what you put on your dinner plate? The career path you choose?
How you interact with the global economy, and how you treat the planet.
Well, if we are going to fix this software bug, we have to look at the foundational code.
And in this framework, the starting point is always the ahamkara, the ego.
Now, I want to pause here because ego is a heavily loaded word in pop psychology.
Very loaded. People misuse it constantly.
Right. Usually when we tell someone, oh, you have a big ego, we mean they are arrogant or they talk about themselves too much.
Well, they just can't take criticism.
Yeah, but the definition in this source material is far more structural. It's almost biological.
That's a crucial distinction. Arrogance is just a behavioral symptom. The ahamkara itself is the foundational structural fact of our existence.
It's born with the body.
Yes, it is the felt sense of I am. It is that entity within you that is always the subject and never the object.
Meaning every experience you have is processed through this central filter that claims reality for itself.
Exactly.
So it's not something you develop later in life because you had a tough childhood?
Or because society conditioned you to be selfish.
Right. It's just baked into the hardware the moment you were born.
It is the biological center of consciousness for a physical organism.
Yeah.
And the most critical aspect of the ego, according to Prashant's diagnosis, is its core condition.
Which is incompleteness.
Yes. The ego doesn't become incomplete through trauma, loss, or a bad breakup. It is fundamentally lacking by its very nature. It is a void.
Let's explore that feeling of incompleteness because I think everyone listening right now can identify with that low-level hum of dissatisfaction.
It's universal.
It's like a crying child that is born dissatisfied and it just spends its entire life looking around the room for toys to feel whole.
It grabs a shiny object, right? A new job, a new relationship, maybe a new car.
And says, maybe this will make me stop crying.
The crying child analogy really captures the sheer desperation of the mechanism.
It really does.
Because the ego is inherently empty. Its primary operation in the world is what Prashant calls appropriation.
Appropriation. So it reaches out into the external world and aggressively borrows things to construct an identity.
Precisely. It generates absolutely nothing of its own.
It borrows a name, it borrows a nationality.
It borrows religious beliefs, wealth, physical attributes, opinions.
It takes all these external things and says, this is me.
It builds a fortress of appropriated material so it doesn't have to face its own terrifying emptiness.
That reframes so much of human conflict, honestly.
How so?
Well, when you look at how tightly people cling to their political opinions or their social status, it's not just stubbornness.
No, it's survival.
Exactly. If you criticize someone's deeply held belief, they often react with the same fight or flight intensity as if you were physically attacking their body.
Because from the ego's perspective, it appropriated that belief to feel complete.
So an attack on the belief literally feels like an existential threat to its survival.
It is a survival mechanism. And this brings us to a really important distinction in the framework between the ego and the mind.
Oh, right. We often use those terms interchangeably, don't we?
We do, but the framework separates them vividly.
So how does it define the mind?
Imagine the ego as a central, empty gravitational point, like a microscopic black hole.
Okay, a black hole.
The mind is the settlement. It is the massive aggregation of objects, relationships, memories, traumas, and desires.
All the stuff that has been pulled in by the ego's gravity and is now orbiting that central point.
Yes, the ego is the gravity and the mind is the solar system of debris caught in the pull.
Wow. So the ego appropriates and the mind is just the collection of all that appropriated material.
That's the exact model.
I have to push back on this, though.
Correct.
This structural model paints us as these empty voids, just mechanically gathering debris. But my lived experience, and I'm sure the experience of everyone listening, is that I am an independent, conscious being making my own deliberate choices.
It certainly feels that way.
I chose to sit down and do this deep dive today. I choose what I want for breakfast. I choose who I fall in love with.
Right.
How does this framework address this overwhelming, undeniable feeling of free will?
This is where the framework introduces the concept of duality and Maya, or illusion.
Okay, Maya, but defined how?
The definition of Maya here is deeply grounded in biology and conditioning. We deeply believe we are sovereign decision makers.
We really do.
But Prashant argues that we are constantly mechanically reacting to external stimuli based on our internal programming.
Give me an example from the text, because it's a really striking analogy about a virus and a dog that completely messed with my understanding of my own choices.
Oh, the rabies analogy. It's vital for understanding this illusion of free will.
Walk us through it.
Consider a dog infected with the rabies virus. The virus enters the dog's system and literally alters its brain chemistry.
Right, it makes the dog hyper-aggressive and creates a phobia of water.
Exactly. And the virus forces the dog to bite another animal to transmit the virus through its saliva.
So the question is, did the dog choose to become aggressive?
Did the dog exercise its free will to bite the neighbor's leg?
No, obviously not. The dog is a victim of the virus.
The virus commanded the dog's physical machinery to spread itself. The dog is just a vehicle.
Okay, but how does that apply to us?
The framework argues that we are the dog in almost every aspect of our lives.
I am really struggling with that. I mean, I understand being driven by extreme instincts, but equating daily human choices to a rabid dog feels like a massive leap.
Well, think about reaching for a slice of chocolate cake.
Okay.
You experience the thought, I want that cake, and you feel like you made a conscious, sovereign decision.
Because I did. I like cake.
But did that ultimate truth within you opt for it? Or did your evolutionary wiring, developed over millions of years to crave dense calories for survival, command your body to move toward the sugar?
Oh, man.
Did your dopamine receptors make the decision before you were even consciously aware of it?
So you're saying we are largely slaves to our chemicals, our hormones, our biological programming.
And our societal conditioning.
Yeah.
Yet the ego steps in after the fact and falsely claims, I chose to do that.
We walk around proudly defending decisions that were actually made by our dopamine level.
Or deeply ingrained childhood fears. That retrospective claim of ownership over a mechanical process is the illusion of Maya.
Okay, I can concede the chocolate cake. That's pure neurochemistry. But what about me choosing to read a dense philosophy book or choosing to do this deep dive? That is not a dopamine spike from sugar. That is intellectual curiosity. Surely that is free will.
Even intellectual curiosity has a biological and conditioned root.
Wait, really?
Yes. Humans evolved as pattern-seeking creatures. Our brains reward us with neurochemical hits when we solve a puzzle, understand a complex system, or gain information.
Because it might help us navigate the world better.
Exactly. Furthermore, your specific conditioning, the culture you grew up in, your education, the values your parents instilled in you, created an environment where you seek validation and completeness through intellectual mastery.
Rather than, say, physical dominance.
Right. You are running a more complex software program than the person who just wants the chocolate cake, but you are still executing a script.
The ego still feels incomplete, and it has simply chosen knowledge as its shiny toy to try and feel whole.
That is the harsh reality of the framework.
That strips away a massive amount of human dignity. I mean, if I am just a sophisticated meat machine executing chemical and cultural scripts, what is the point?
It can feel bleak at first.
If I'm fundamentally asleep at the wheel, how do I ever wake up?
This is the exact pivot point where true spirituality, or adhyatma, enters the framework.
And it's vital to clearly define what the sources mean by spirituality, because the word has been totally hijacked.
Completely. Adhyatma has absolutely nothing to do with looking for ghosts, summoning spirits, or manifesting wealth.
Or escaping to astral planes.
Right. It is defined as the factual knowledge of the self.
So it's an investigation.
It is the arduous, rigorous journey of ascending from this imaginary, conditioned reality up to a factual reality and ultimately toward the highest truth, or satya.
And this brings us to one of the most fascinating dialogues in the source material.
The one with the neuroscientist.
Yes.
Yeah.
There is a transcript of an intense conversation between Acharya Prashant and a neuroscientist. They dive into comparing the scientific method with the spiritual method.
It's a brilliant exchange. Normally in modern society, we categorize physics, chemistry, and biology as the hard sciences.
Because they deal in undeniable facts. And we treat spirituality as this soft, subjective, woo-woo realm.
Where everyone's personal truth is equally valid.
Right. But Prashant flips that entire paradigm on its head.
He argues that spirituality is actually a far harder science than physics. And his logic is quite rigorous.
How so?
Science is considered hard, precisely because it is designed to completely remove the observer's bias from the equation.
So if a physicist is measuring the swing of a pendulum, it does not matter if that physicist is happy, depressed, greedy, or altruistic.
The pendulum swing measures the same. The internal state of the scientist doesn't interfere with the gravitational fact.
Right. The neuroscientist in the dialogue pointed out that in a scientific paper, you declare your conflict of interest at the very end.
You disclose who funded the study to ensure transparency.
But in the science of Adhyatma, your conflict of interest is perpetual.
Exactly. You are not measuring a pendulum outside of yourself. You are measuring your own mind.
The ego is tasked with observing the ego.
And that is the problem. The very entity that is full of deception, the very entity that desperately wants to protect its own illusions and its appropriated identity, is the instrument conducting the investigation.
You are trying to objectively measure a corrupt system while you are deeply entangled inside that system.
That makes it exponentially more difficult than measuring the speed of light. It is highly vulnerable to self-deception.
Because the ego can just appropriate the concept of spirituality to make itself feel superior.
It happens all the time.
It says, look at me, I'm so enlightened, I meditate 3 hours a day. It just changes its costume from a corporate executive to a spiritual seeker.
But it's still playing the exact same game of trying to feel complete.
That is the ultimate trap of the spiritual ego.
Precisely. So the method required to navigate this is what the sources call the pathless path.
Which is frustrating for a lot of people.
Why is that?
Because we love a good 10-step program. We want the 7 habits of highly enlightened people.
True. We want specific meditation postures to hold, specific mantras to chant.
Comforting rituals that tell us we are making progress on a linear track.
The framework denies all of that. There are no prescribed techniques.
No stages of meditation to unlock like a video game.
No comforting rituals to soothe your anxiety. Those things just give the ego more toys to appropriate.
So what is the method?
The only method is the continuous, ruthless, real-time observation of the ego in action in your daily life.
What does that look like practically for the listener? Let's say you're commuting to work.
Okay, it looks like catching yourself in the moment. You are driving, someone cuts you off in traffic, and you feel that sudden surge of intense road rage.
Oh, I know that feeling well.
We all do. Instead of getting lost in the narrative of, that guy is a jerk, he disrespected me.
You instantly turn the camera inward.
Yes. You observe the physical sensation of the anger. You observe the ego feeling threatened because its imaginary bubble of control was pierced.
You catch your own machinery reacting.
You watch the dopamine and adrenaline spike, and you say, there is the biological programming running its script.
It's almost like catching yourself red-handed in the act of being foolish.
That's a great way to put it. But the sources mention a very specific attitude you must have when you catch yourself.
Right, you don't judge it. You just acknowledge it with a smile.
That smile is a non-negotiable part of the method. The text mentions that you must develop a profound sense of irony.
You must be willing to accept yourself as a fool.
If you catch yourself getting intensely angry over getting cut off in traffic, and then you get angry at yourself for being angry.
Like, I shouldn't be feeling this, I'm supposed to be spiritual.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you do that, you have just created another layer of ego. You have turned into a hypocrite, taking yourself far too seriously.
You're just pulling the rubber band tighter.
Yes. It requires immense courage and a deep love for the truth to constantly observe your own ugliness.
Your own petty desires, your own irrational fears.
Without flinching, but also without making excuses or beating yourself up.
Yeah.
You just watch the machine operate.
If we are engaged in this intense, real-time observation of our actions, we inevitably slam right into the massive philosophical concepts of karma and dharma.
And the framework completely dismantles the popular commercialized versions of these ideas.
He really takes a sledgehammer to how modern society understands karma.
Let's look at the pop culture understanding of karma first.
Right. Regardless of whether you grew up in a traditional Eastern religion or you just see it on Instagram bumper stickers, most people view karma as a cosmic scoreboard.
A ledger in the sky.
The belief is, if I do a good deed today, if I help an old lady cross the street, the universe owes me a favor.
And you'll get a promotion next week.
Conversely, if I do something bad, I will get punished down the road. Maybe in 10 years, or maybe I'll be reincarnated as a bug in my next life.
It is fundamentally an economy of delayed gratification.
How does Prashant categorize that?
He calls that interpretation a childish, greed-based model. It is a societal construct designed to keep populations compliant through a system of fear and bribery.
Behave well and you'll get a cookie later.
Exactly. In his framework, the fruit of the action is inherent in the action itself. The outcome is instantaneous.
Wait, so there's no waiting period? The universe isn't keeping a tally?
There is no ledger. To understand this, we have to connect it back to the core diagnosis. The ego is defined by its state.
Okay, break that down.
If you make the choice to steal something, you don't have to wait for a cosmic judge to send you to hell after you die.
What's the punishment then?
The punishment is immediate. You instantly become a thief.
Wow.
Your internal state degrades the exact millisecond you make the choice.
I really need to press you on this because it sounds good in theory, but look at the real world.
Okay.
Let's say there is a corrupt billionaire. He defrauds thousands of people, steals their pensions, and uses the money to buy a massive super yacht.
A classic example.
He is sitting on the deck of his yacht in the Mediterranean, drinking expensive champagne, laughing with his friends, and he feels absolutely zero guilt.
Right. He is a psychopath.
Where is his punishment? How has his internal state degraded if he feels perfectly happy?
That is the classic objection, and it reveals how narrowly we define punishment. We assume punishment must look like visible suffering or conscious guilt.
But guilt is just a secondary emotion.
Yes. The true degradation of consciousness is much deeper. The billionaire on the yacht has conditioned his mind to require massive, external, stolen stimuli just to feel a baseline level of satisfaction. He's completely disconnected from the subtle, quiet reality of truth.
Yeah.
He cannot experience genuine peace.
He can only experience the frantic, temporary high of domination.
Exactly. His mind is a fortress of paranoia, constantly calculating how to protect his stolen wealth, constantly needing a bigger yacht or a newer thrill because the current one is already fading.
He is entirely trapped in the machinery of his own endless cravings.
That numbness, that inability to experience true, uncaused joy is the hell. He is burning right now. He's just so numb, he thinks the fire is a warm blanket.
That shifts the paradigm entirely. Karma isn't about the external event that happens to your body later. It's about the state of the doer right now.
Yes.
The fire doesn't come later. If I act out of anger, I am the fire in that moment.
And this instantaneous view of action leads directly to his redefinition of dharma.
In conventional society, dharma is usually translated as religion, duty, or social obligation.
Right.
Right.
People will say, it is my dharma to fight for my country, or it is my dharma to take over the family business because my parents expect it.
It gets weaponized as a tool for social conformity.
How does the framework strip that away? Prashant argues that true dharma is strictly individual. It is not a social mandate dictated by your family, your government, or your culture.
So what is it?
Dharma is the absolute, singular obligation to liberate your own ego from its eternal suffering. That is your only real job.
So dharma is figuring out what you actually want.
Yes, but we have to be very careful with the word want,
Why is that?
because it is not what your ego thinks it wants today. It is not craving the newest smartphone, or wanting revenge on an ex, or seeking a promotion.
Those are just the toys the crying child is reaching for.
Exactly. Dharma is figuring out what the core of you has been intensely desiring since eternity, which is completeness, wholeness, truth.
So your only real duty in life is to apply the medicine of truth to the sickness of the ego.
That's the essence of it.
This sounds intensely personal, almost solitary. We've spent a massive amount of time in this deep dive looking entirely inward.
We have.
We've analyzed the microscopic functions of the ego, the neurochemistry of our choices, the internal degradation of karma. But this is where the source material makes a massive, jarring pivot.
The transition to the external world.
Yeah, we transition from the internal crisis of the mind to the external existential crisis of the planet.
It's a crucial shift.
How does this highly internal framework of self-observation connect to the literal destruction of the Earth? I mean, how do we get from the crying ego to global climate change?
This connection is perhaps the most vital and urgent application of Prashant's entire philosophy.
Okay.
He argues, quite forcefully, that the global climate catastrophe is not a technological problem.
It's not an engineering failure or a lack of good policy.
No. It is fundamentally a spiritual disease. He connects the ego's core condition, that inherent incompleteness, directly to the destruction of the biosphere.
Walk me through the mechanics of that connection. Are you saying that the appropriation we talked about earlier, the ego grabbing things to feel whole, is scaling up to destroy the planet?
Exactly. When you have one ego trying to plug the inner hole in its heart with external stuff, you have an unhappy person.
Right.
When you have 8 billion egos desperately trying to plug that exact same hole through mass consumption enabled by globalized industrial supply chains,
You have a climate catastrophe.
we feel empty on the inside. So we buy more fast fashion, we buy bigger SUVs, we demand more energy-intensive gadgets.
So the carbon emissions clogging the atmosphere aren't just the byproduct of industry.
They are the literal exhaust fumes of human dissatisfaction. We are violently digging up millions of years of sequestered carbon from the earth and burning it into the sky.
Simply to fuel our endless, unfillable psychological desires.
Yes.
The exhaust fumes of human dissatisfaction. That is a terrifyingly precise image.
It frames the crisis perfectly.
The sources use another chilling analogy here about a monkey with a nuke button. Let's unpack that because it highlights the massive gap between our external technology and our internal software.
We have evolved technologically at a blinding exponential rate.
We have artificial intelligence, we have gene editing, we have space stations.
But our internal operating system hasn't had a significant update since the Pleistocene epoch.
We are still primitive hunter-gatherers on the inside.
The Paleolithic brain was wired for extreme scarcity. If a hunter-gatherer found sugar or fat, their brain screamed at them to consume all of it immediately to survive the winter.
They were constantly looking to hunt, gather, and hoard.
But today, you take that exact same Paleolithic brain, that exact same terrified, greedy ego, and instead of a wooden spear, you hand it a mechanized factory farm, a deep-sea oil rig, and a nuclear arsenal.
Science and technology give the ego godlike power.
But without the self-knowledge to regulate its desires, science just exponentially amplifies our destructive capacity.
So knowledge without wisdom is a suicide pact.
Essentially, yes.
If I am an empty, insecure person and you give me advanced technology, I'm not going to use it to achieve enlightenment.
You're going to use it to try and make yourself feel secure, which usually means extracting more resources and dominating other people.
This is the exact reason why Prashant launched Operation 2030, isn't it?
Yes, it is his massive climate initiative strategically tied to the United Nations deadline to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius.
But unlike conventional environmental campaigns that focus exclusively on carbon credits, switching to paper straws, or building more solar panels,
Operation 2030 is fundamentally a spiritual mission.
because if humanity doesn't fix the center, the crying, incomplete ego driving the consumption, no amount of renewable energy will save us.
Precisely. Let's say tomorrow we invent a perfectly clean, infinite source of fusion energy. Free, zero-carbon electricity for the whole world.
That would be amazing, right?
But if the human ego remains unchanged, what will we do with that infinite energy?
We'll use it to build 10 times as many factories.
To mine the last remaining minerals. To produce 100 times more useless consumer junk to try and fill the internal void.
We won't save the planet. We will just accelerate its destruction using green energy instead of fossil fuels.
If you do not treat the internal disease of consumption, the external symptoms will just find new, more efficient ways to manifest.
Which brings us to a part of the framework that is incredibly difficult for many people to confront.
It's a tough topic.
This unchecked consumption, driven by our terror of emptiness, doesn't just harm an abstract concept like the climate or the atmosphere.
It leads to the direct, mechanized, terrifying suffering of billions of conscious beings.
We have to talk about the vegan imperative in Acharya Prashant's teachings.
It is a non-negotiable pillar of his framework. You cannot claim to be practicing self-observation or seeking the truth while simultaneously turning a blind eye to the reality of what is on your plate.
The math presented in the sources regarding animal agriculture just stops you in your tracks. Let's really look at this.
It's staggering.
During a typical 10-minute conversation, humans slaughter 7 million animals for food. Think about that number. 7 million in 10 minutes.
Picture a massive sports stadium holding 100,000 people.
Now picture 70 of those stadiums packed to the brim with living, breathing animals.
And every 10 minutes, all 70 stadiums are wiped out.
It is an industrial-scale massacre that we have completely normalized, hidden behind the polite packaging of a supermarket.
And the framework points out that when the ego is confronted with this staggering reality, it immediately throws up highly sophisticated intellectual defenses.
It uses logic to justify its physical craving.
Exactly.
Right.
Prashant systematically breaks down these common arguments.
The most prevalent one is the lion argument, right?
Yes. People will say, well, lions eat gazelles. It's the circle of life. Nature is inherently violent. Why shouldn't I eat meat? I'm just part of the food chain.
I have absolutely used that argument myself in the past. It feels very grounded in biology.
It does. But what is his counter to the lion defense?
Well, what does he say?
The counter centers on the capacity for choice. A lion is essentially a biological machine operating strictly on instinct. It has no choice.
A lion cannot sit down, reflect on the suffering of a gazelle, and decide to become a vegetarian.
If it tried, its digestive system would fail and it would die. Because the lion has no cognitive or physical choice, its actions exist outside the realm of morality.
They cannot be classified as violent or nonviolent, they just are.
But humans are not lions. We have a higher level of consciousness.
We have the physiological ability to thrive entirely on a plant-based diet.
And more importantly, we have the cognitive ability to recognize suffering and make a choice to avoid it.
Therefore, when a human being who does not need to kill to survive chooses to kill an animal purely for sensory pleasure, taste, or convenience,
That is not the circle of life. That is willful violence.
because we are actively opting into the suffering when a viable alternative exists.
Exactly. But then the ego pivots to the next defense, which is the plant life argument.
Oh yeah, people always say, well, plants are alive too. They respond to stimuli. If you eat a salad, you're killing plants. So vegans are hypocrites.
Prashant approaches this not just from an ethical standpoint, but mathematically and thermodynamically.
Let's look at the basic physics of the food chain.
Energy is lost at every trophic level. Even if we completely accept the premise that harvesting plants is a form of violence, the math absolutely destroys the meat eater's argument.
How so?
To produce just 1 single kilogram of animal meat, let's say a steak, you have to feed that animal roughly 17 kilograms of plant matter over the course of its life.
So by choosing to eat the animal, you are actually responsible for destroying 17 times more plants than if you had just eaten the plants directly.
Exactly. It is a completely inefficient thermodynamic catastrophe that maximizes suffering at every possible level.
You are killing the animal, and you are killing exponentially more plants to do it. It is entirely indefensible mathematically.
And when logic and math fail, the ego retreats to its final fortress, which is culture.
People say, but eating meat is my culture. It's tradition. My ancestors did it. We have holidays centered around roasting a turkey or a lamb. You can't ask me to abandon my heritage.
Prashant's response to the culture argument is blunt and historically grounded.
What does he say?
Culture is not an absolute moral authority. Human slavery was once considered culture globally.
Untouchability and caste discrimination were heavily defended as culture.
Denying women the right to vote or own property was the dominant culture for centuries. Just because a practice has been normalized and repeated by your ancestors for 1,000 years does not mean it is aligned with truth or compassion.
Culture is not a static excuse to avoid moral evolution. It is a fluid construct that must continuously evolve alongside human consciousness.
If your culture requires the immense, unnecessary cruelty of factory farming, then your culture needs a severe upgrade.
This all ties back to a concept he introduces called the spiritual footprint.
We spend so much time analyzing our carbon footprint, how many flights we take, what kind of car we drive.
But the spiritual footprint is about the internal degradation that occurs when you participate in cruelty.
When you hurt another conscious creature just to fill an unfillable void in yourself, or to satisfy a momentary craving on your tongue, your internal state plummets.
True religion, true spirituality, must have compassion at its absolute, non-negotiable center.
If it doesn't, it is just a violently defended belief system.
To reach the level of clarity required to exhibit that kind of active compassion, and to sustain that rigorous self-observation, Prashant goes on what the sources describe as myth demolition tours.
He systematically travels around, actively stripping away the comforting lies, pseudoscience, and cultural superstitions.
The stuff society feeds us to keep us complacent and asleep. He really takes no prisoners here.
Let's look at one of the biggest myths he targets: astrology.
Why are we, as a highly educated, technologically advanced society that can land rovers on Mars, still so obsessed with horoscopes, numerology, tarot cards?
Why do multi-million-dollar high-rise buildings still physically skip the 13th floor?
It leads right back to the ego's fundamental terror.
We live in a random, unpredictable, chaotic universe. The ego, feeling hollow and vulnerable, is utterly terrified of this uncertainty.
It cannot handle the idea that things happen without reason, so it desperately seeks artificial certainty on the outside.
It wants an authority figure to look at a chart and say, "Don't worry, the planets are aligned in your favor."
You will meet your soulmate this month. You will get that promotion.
Prashant dismisses astrology as absolute, dangerous bogus because it robs the individual of their agency and reinforces the ego's external dependence.
There is a brilliant, undeniable logical takedown in the sources regarding the gravitational pull of planets, applying basic high school physics to astrology.
Yes, the fundamental claim of astrology is that the position and gravity of massive celestial bodies like Jupiter or Saturn affect your personality and your destiny at the exact moment of your birth.
Prashant points out a basic law of physics. Gravity follows the inverse square law.
The force of gravity weakens exponentially with distance.
Therefore, the gravitational pull of the physical wooden table the doctor is standing next to in the delivery room is exerting a measurably stronger physical force on the newborn baby's body than the planet Saturn is, millions of miles away.
So if planetary gravity determines my fate, I should be much more worried about the feng shui of my dining room table.
It's completely absurd when you stop operating on superstition and actually apply basic physics to the claim.
But people don't want physics. They want comfort. They want a neat narrative that makes them feel special, safe, and absolved of responsibility for their choices.
And this desire for a comforting narrative directly parallels his profound critique of the popular concept of God and religion.
Right, because for the vast majority of people, God is just the ultimate astrologer.
The big guy in the sky, keeping that cosmic karma scoreboard we talked about earlier, he's the ultimate authority figure that the ego wants to appease.
Prashant completely rejects the anthropomorphic guy-in-the-sky version of God. He argues that when religion is based on a separate external entity sitting on a cloud, it inevitably devolves into a violent tribal belief system.
My God versus your God. My ancient book says this. Your ancient book says that. So now we have to go to war to prove whose invisible friend is more powerful.
So if God isn't an external creator managing the universe, how does his framework define God?
Good question.
God is simply a synonym for truth. It is the highest potential within you.
Think of the old parable of the two wolves fighting inside you.
The wolf of ego and fear, and the wolf of truth and compassion.
The one that wins is the one you feed. The choice to live a true, compassionate, honest life, moment by moment, is the choice to let God win.
God isn't going to swoop down and magically fix the climate crisis, and God isn't going to stop a war.
God is the latent potential for truth that you either actively actualize through your daily choices or you ignore.
That is a heavy realization because it puts 100% of the responsibility squarely back on the individual.
You can't pray for someone else to come and fix your mess. You have to clean up your own mind.
And speaking of individual responsibility and the desire for quick fixes, the sources also touch on how he dissects misunderstood modern trends.
There is a fascinating breakdown of the internet obsession with nofap and how it misinterprets the ancient concept of brahmacharya.
This is a perfect case study in how modern self-help culture completely misses the depth of ancient wisdom.
Over the last few years, there has been a massive trend of young men practicing semen retention,
Participating in nofap challenges.
thinking that the mere mechanical act of not masturbating will grant them superhuman focus, biological superpowers, or spiritual enlightenment.
It's treating a symptom of the mind with a purely mechanical physical fix. It's like putting a Band-Aid on a broken leg.
Exactly. Prashant heavily critiques this peripheral obsession. He explains that brahmacharya, a profound ancient concept, isn't merely about retaining semen.
The word itself translates to walking the path of Brahman, living in a way that continuously negates falseness and seeks the ultimate truth.
He points out the psychological trap. If you are sitting there all day, constantly thinking about not masturbating,
Tracking your streak on a mobile app, fighting your physical urges, clenching your fists,
your mind is still completely and totally consumed by lust.
the object of your focus is still sex. You are just focusing on the denial of it. You haven't transcended anything. You are just locked in a miserable wrestling match with your own biology.
It is the classic pink elephant paradox. If I tell you not to think about a pink elephant, it's all you can think about.
You are just suppressing the ego's desires, not understanding them.
So what is the actual cure in his framework?
The cure is never suppression. The cure is elevation. You have to find a higher purpose, a devotion to the truth.
Or a mission that is so magnificent and all-consuming that it makes those trivial biological desires completely redundant.
If your life is filled with profound meaning, whether that is fighting for the climate, deeply serving others, or pursuing self-knowledge, you simply don't have the spare time, the mental bandwidth, or the boredom required to be consumed by base urges.
The lower desires drop away not because you violently suppress them, but because you outgrew them.
We have covered an immense, staggering amount of ground today.
We started by looking at how Acharya Prashant took the elite optimizations of his IIT and IM background and applied that rigorous logic to dismantling the human condition.
We mapped the foundational diagnosis, the painful biological recognition of our own ego's incompleteness.
That crying child inside us that desperately tries to appropriate the world to feel whole.
And from that grim diagnosis, we explored the required method, the rigorous, unbiased, incredibly difficult science of self-observation.
Catching the ego in its act of appropriation, observing the neurochemical machinery of our choices.
And doing it all with a profound, forgiving sense of irony rather than judgment.
We saw how that observation radically redefines karma not as a future reward or a cosmic ledger.
but as the immediate instantaneous degradation or elevation of your internal state based on your choices.
We saw how dharma becomes your ultimate personal obligation to seek the truth, not just obeying societal rules.
And crucially, we traced how this intense internal work is the only viable solution to our external catastrophes.
The unexamined ego, armed with modern technology, leads directly to the climate crisis.
The exhaust fumes of our dissatisfaction. This realization demands absolute active compassion, specifically highlighted by the undeniable mathematical and ethical imperative to stop the mechanized slaughter of animals.
Finally, we saw how this framework requires us to relentlessly demolish our comforting myths.
Whether that's relying on the gravity of Saturn to dictate our week, waiting for a guy in the sky to fix our problems, or using superficial self-help hacks to suppress our nature.
It replaces all of those illusions with a brutal, loving honesty.
If you, the listener, take anything away from this deep dive, let it be this. This framework is not about escaping your daily life.
It is not about retreating to a monastery. It is about leaning into your immediate reality with uncompromising attention.
Every single choice you make today, what you put in your body for lunch, how you react to an annoying email, what you buy online, is your laboratory.
It is a real-time opportunity to practice the dissolution of the ego.
So where does this leave us? I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. Something to take with you as you navigate your own laboratory today.
Let's hear it.
If true liberation isn't a final destination you can ever permanently reach, because, as we established, the ego is tied to your biology and resurrects every single day as long as your heart is beating, what does that mean for our concept of success and spirituality?
We are so wired by our culture to achieve, to reach the finish line.
To get the ultimate certificate of enlightenment. But perhaps the ultimate freedom isn't found in achieving a perfect static state of blissful completion.
Perhaps true liberation is found in the quiet, daily, ordinary courage of simply refusing to lie to yourself anymore, day after day, choice after choice.
It's accepting that the software bug will always be part of the hardware, always trying to write itself back into your code. The victory isn't in a one-time deletion.
The ultimate victory is in waking up and running the diagnostic scan every single morning, without fail, and doing it with a smile.
Don't just buy a new monitor. Look at the code.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. It's been a heavy, profound exploration, but an absolutely necessary one. We will catch you next time.